We continue now at the top of Daf Bava Amud Aleph from Meseches Babba Kamma. This is Babba Kamma Daf 86a. On the previous Amud Rabba asked, what if somebody injures a person in a way that's temporary, that it will fully heal? Does the person have to pay for his loss of value for that period of time? And the Gemara is now bringing a proof from a Mishnah. The Mishnah says that if a person injures his father or his mother but doesn't cause a wound, so chayev bekulan, in that case he's chayev to pay all of them. The other case the Mishnah is dealing with is if he injures his friend on Yom Kippur, again chayev bekulan, and Rashi says chayev bekulan chamisha devarim, meaning all 5 payments have to be made, nezek, tsar, riboy, sheves, and boshes. And so the Gemara now says, Hailo asa chabura hechidami, the case here where a person injures his mother or his father and there's no wound, what exactly is the case? Lav kagon sheikoal yad, it wasn't the case that he hit him on his hand, v'sofo lachzor, and it's something that is going to heal, v'katani chayev bekulan, and it says he's chayev in all of them. Apparently you are chayev for nezek, etc., in those kinds of situations. Rashi says, Lav kagon sheiko, deve'ein sofo lachzor lekalamemar dechol below chabura, sofo lachzor, you can't say that it's not going to heal, because if there's no wound at all, it is going to heal. And so again, that seems to be the case. It seems to be an answer to Rabba. It seems to be that you are chayiv. And the Gemara says, Amri, they explain as follows, Hacha b'mayaskin, and here the case could be a different case. Here in this Mishnah, the case is as follows, Kagon shacher sho v'lo asa bo chabur. The case is that he made him deaf, but there was no wound. And so in that situation, you have a case again where it's not going to heal, has nothing to do with Rabba's question, but there is no wound. But the Gemara continues, Vama Rabba, but didn't Rabba say, HaChorish as Aviv, if somebody makes his father deaf, Neharag, he is killed, Lafi she'iyef shalacharisha below chabur, because it's impossible to make someone deaf without a wound, and so there actually is a wound over here. It wouldn't be the case of this Mishnah. This Mishnah is dealing specifically where there's no death penalty, where there's no wound, Tipsa de dama nafla le'budne, because it has to be that at least a drop of blood fell in his ear. And so the Gemara gives a different explanation. El hacha b'mayaskin, and rather here, what are we talking about? Kagon shagilchu. The case over here is where he shaved him. Rashi says shagilchu da'afchase mikaspe v'lo chabura. This is a case where he actually would go down in value, even though he doesn't have a wound. But the Gemara says gilcho mahader hader v'hainu bayan. But the Gemara says if he shaves him, that will return. That's going to get better. And so therefore, that's exactly our question. That actually would answer our question. Rashi says hachi garsin on gilcho mahader hader hainu bayan kolomer mali seir mali yad. What difference does it make? You now have an injury to the hand, to the hair instead of the hand. It's the same thing. Habisofo lachzer mechayevisli. In all cases, you're saying that it's a case where it's sofo lachzer. It's going to be healing, and we're saying that the person does have to pay. That's why v'hainu bayan. That seemed to answer our question. It would be a proof to our question. And the Gemara says, Amri, the sages say, hacha b'mayaskin. And here, what are we talking about? Kagon shasachu nasha. The case over here is that he used an ointment that causes the hair to fall out to lo hadar, and it's not going to return. Rashi says, Nasha Sam HaMesher Sasar, it's like a drug that causes the hair to fall out, Ve'eno Chozer, it's not going to return. Ve'iko Nezek Ta'afchase Mikaspe Demumhu. This is like a blemish, he is lowering him in his value, and so this is a situation of Nezek, and it's something that there's no wound, but it is not going to heal. And the Gemara now explains why there are all 5 payments apply. Tsar, the reason why there's pain here, the Islay Kartufne Bereshi, because there are fissures on his head. V'tzavchi Mehano Kartufne, he screams out because of those fissures. Ripoy, and the healing, the boy because that does need healing. Sheves, and in terms of the Sheves, how is there a loss of income in this situation? To have him market Beikuve, the case is that he would dance at the taverns, to boy Machve Gvane Aresha, because he needs to do certain movements with his head. Velo Machve Mehanu Kartufni, he's not able to do that because of the fissures on his head. And Boshas, in terms of humiliation, Ein Loch Boshas Gadol Mizeh, there is no greater humiliation than this. And Rashi says, Kartufni bekoim chatotin. Again, it's like there are scrapes inside of his head. Mitzavchi le machivim lo, and it hurts him. Machmas chozak asam. That's the strength of the sam that was used. The boy lasuya, he needs to heal etzara, the pain. The hanach kartufni, because of these fissures. And sheves, to have him merakid bekuvi loshen merakid bechanuyos. It's like dancing in the stores. The boy achve gvani mare ninua beroshu. He's got to shake his head laharos mine schok, to make it like it's funny. Kederech haletzanim, like the leitzanim, like those who mock, like those who make comedy. The hashtag sheyirpa hanach kartufne. Now, until he heals these kartufne, lo matzimachve, he won't be able to do this. Now, even though he's not batal from other work, no sin lo sheves zu hol malachta bekach, he would get paid for this sheves because this is his work, and so he would be paid this sheves payment. And the Gemara continues, Umilsa deboile la Rabba, this issue, which was a question for Rabba in terms of injuries that are going to heal, Pshita leili Abaya lahachgisa u'lerava lahachgisa, it actually is obvious to Abaya, he answers in one direction, and Rava answers in another direction, de itmar, as we learn the following machlokas amuroim. He koal yodo v'tzamtsa v'sofa lachzer, let's say he hit him on his hand and it weakened his hand, but it is going to heal. Abaya Amar Abaya says, no sin lo sheves gedola v'sheves katana. He has to pay him what's called sheves gedola and sheves katana. Rashi will explain. The Rav Amar and Rava says, Eino no sin lo ela demei shifto shebechol yom v'yom. He only pays him the sheves of each day. And Rashi explains sheves gedola demei yodo. When Abaya says that he has to pay sheves gedola, that is the actual value of his hand. The sheves katana, and what's sheves katana? Kol yomim sheyipol lemishkav, meaning all of the days that he has to lie down, that he can't work. Rowan oso ki'iluhu shomer kishu, and we view him as though he could have done work. He could have watched over cucumbers, and so a cucumber field, and so therefore Abaya says essentially you're paying both nezek and the sheves payment. And Rava says you give him the sheves shebechol yom v'yom, the sheves of every day, ad sheyachzor lekadmuso, meaning until he gets better. No sin lo bechol yom kemoshe neskorim poalim b'shuk. You actually have to give him according to what you'd pay a real worker in the marketplace. V'lo keshomer kishuin. You don't go by the person who watches cucumbers. T'halu Rava lo yoev le demeyado, because according to Rava you are not paying the nezek payment. That was the whole question in the beginning, according to Rabba. And Rava saying there is no nezek payment, but therefore the sheves payment is a little bigger because you're giving him like a typical worker. And the Gemara continues, Itmar, we have the following machlokas amoraim, hakotea yad eved ivri shel chaver. If somebody cuts off the hand of an eved ivri of his friend, his friend owns an eved ivri, and he cuts off that eved ivri's hand. Abaya amar nosin lo sheves gedola le'eved, v'sheves katana l'rav. Abaya says that the sheves gedola, which is basically the nezek payment, that goes to the eved, that goes to the eved ivri, and the sheves katana, which is again the amount of paying somebody to watch a cucumber field, that is going to go to the master. Rava Amar, Rava says, Hakol yinasin la'eved, everything should be given to the eved, should be given to the eved ivri. V'yilkach ben karka, and he can use it to buy karka, to buy land. V'harav ochel peiros, and then the master, he'll be able to eat the fruits of that land. And Rashi explains, Hachi garsinan hakotea yad eved ivri shel chavero, kotea mamish dein sofolach. So we're talking about cutting off a hand, it's not going to heal, it's not going to get better. And the Gemara continues and explains, Pshita, it is obvious, Piches Eitzel Atzmo. Let's say he lowers his value in terms of the Eved. For the Eved himself, his value is diminished. Ve'etzel Rabba lo Piches, but his value is not diminished at all in terms of the master. Hechidami, and the Gemara says, what exactly would be a case of that? The Paske l'reish Onei o l'reish Nechire, let's say he splits the tip of his ear or the tip of his nostrils. So there it doesn't affect the work he does for the master, but it could affect the value of the Eved himself. So in that case, there's no dispute. Hakol li'atzmo, in that case, everybody agrees that everything is given to the Eved because the damage essentially is really only to the Eved. Piches Eitzel Rabba, but the only question is, let's say it's a diminishment of value in terms of the master to the master, that's Pluksa de Abaya v'Rava, that's the argument between Abaya and Rava. Again, Abaya says in this case the Sheves Gedola goes to the Eved, the Sheves Ketana goes to the master. Rava says everything goes to the Eved, he purchases land, and the master gets the peiros. And Rashi explains, Ve'etzel Rabba lo piches, if there's no diminishment of value to the master, shelo batlu mimalacha, meaning he's still able to work. Piches etzel Rabbo, af etzel Rabbo kakon kiteas yodo. If there is a diminishment by the master, meaning even to the master, of course there's a diminishment to the Eved, but let's say, for example, he cuts off his hand, that's a diminishment of value to both the Eved and the master. Again, it's in that situation that there's a machlokas Abaya and Rava. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Boshas, when it comes to the Boshas payment, hakol lefi hamevayesh v'hamizbayesh, it all goes according to who is causing the humiliation and who's being humiliated. It depends on the exact circumstances. And the Gemara says, Mani Masnisin, who's the author of our Mishnah? Lo Rabbi Meir v'lo Rabbi Yehuda. It's not Rabbi Meir and it's not Rabbi Yehuda. El Rabbi Shimon. Rather, our Mishnah is Rabbi Shimon. The Tanan, as we learned in the Mishnah, V'kulan roan osan ki'ilu heim b'nei chorin sheyardu minichseim. When it comes to Boshes, whether we're dealing with wealthy people or poor people, all of them, we view them as though they are free people, sheyardu minichseim, that have lost their property, shein b'nei Avram, Yitzchak v'Yakov, that they are children of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Divrei Rabbi Meir, that's Rabbi Meir's opinion. In other words, Rabbi Meir says we treat everyone the same in terms of evaluating the Boshes payment. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yehuda says, Hagadol lefi godlo v'hakatan lefi katano. It depends. If the person is greater, we evaluate based on his greatness. If he's smaller, we evaluate based on that. We treat every person according to his level. Rabbi Shimon says, Ashirim, when it comes to wealthy people, we treat them as though they are free people who have lost their property. That's a little bit of a leniency on on the person who caused the humiliation. And aniyim, and when it comes to poor people as well, kipchusin shebehen, we evaluate them as the lowest among the poor people. Again, that causes that the person pays a little less. And the Gemara says money. So who's the author of our Mishnah? Rabbi Meir, if you're going to say it's Rabbi Meir, masnisim katani hakol lefi hamevayish v'hamizbayish. Our Mishnah says it goes according to the one who caused the embarrassment and the one who's being embarrassed. But Rabbi Meir, kulu b'hadei hadadi ninu. But Rabbi Meir, he says everyone's treated exactly the same, so it can't be Rabbi Meir. V'i Rabbi Yehuda, and if you're going to say our Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda, masnisim katani hamevayish asasum chayiv. Our Mishnah says, the Mishnah is going to say that if somebody embarrasses a blind person, he's chayiv. V'ilu Rabbi Yehuda Omer, whereas Rabbi Yehuda, he says, summa ein lo boshas, by a blind person, there is no boshas payment, there's no payment of humiliation. Elalav Rabbi Shimon, so the Gemara says, rather than not, it's clear that our Mishnah is Rabbi Shimon. But the Gemara says, Afilu Tamer Rabbi Yehuda. You actually could say our Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda. Ki Amar Rabbi Yehuda Suma Ein Lo Boshas. When did Rabbi Yehuda say that a blind person doesn't get boshas? That's Lemishkal Minei. That's to collect from the blind person. If he causes that boshas, he doesn't have to pay. Aval Lemeis Ve'lei Yahavinan Lei. But to give him, that we do. And so therefore Rabbi Yehuda makes a distinction, and it could be that Rabbi Yehuda is in line with our Mishnah, which says Hamevayish Hasuma Chayiv. If one is Mevayish, a blind person, he's Chayiv to pay for that boshas. Rabbi Yehuda also might agree with that. But the Gemara says, V'amidiktani seva, but from the fact that we learn at the end of the Mishnah, Hamevayish Hasayoshin, if somebody embarrasses somebody who's sleeping, Chayiv, then he's Chayiv, Yoshin should be Yesh Potter, but if a sleeping person, if he embarrasses somebody else, he's Potter, V'lokatani Suma should be Yesh Potter, but it doesn't make that distinction by a blind person. It doesn't say that if a Suma embarrasses others, he is Potter, and it's only Hamevayish as Hasuma is going to be Chayiv. Mechlal de Loshna Hachi v'Loshna Hachi. It sounds like our Mishnah actually does not make a distinction, and in both directions we say there's always going to be a Chiyav of Boshas when it comes to a Suma, and so then again, clearly, Rabbi Yehuda is not going to be in line with our Mishnah, and so the Gemara says, Alamachvarta Masnis and Rabbi Shimon. Rather, you have to go back to what we said before, that really the Mishnah is Rabbi Shimon. And we will note over here that earlier when it says Ditnan that we learned in the Mishnah, the Mesoras Hashas changes it to Ditanya because this is a Braisa. And the Gemara continues at the two dots, Man Tana Lohad Tanu Rabbanan, who is the Tana that authors the following Braisa? Neskavin Levayesh Asakatan Uviyesh Asagadol. If a person has intention to embarrass a Katan and instead he embarrasses a Gadol, no sin Legadol to make Boshto Shal Katan. So he pays the Gadol the Boshas payment according to the Boshas payment he would have made to the Katan. The Gemara will discuss what exactly it means Katan and Gadol. At first the Gemara going to say it means Katan means he's poor and Gadol means that he is rich. Levayesh as Eved Uvayesh as ben Chorin. The Brisa continues, if he had intention to embarrass a slave and instead he embarrassed a free man, again no sin Leven Chorin demei Boshto shel Eved. He pays the free man according to the amount of Boshas payment he would have made to the Eved. And so the Gemara now says money. Who is the author of this Brisa? Lo Rabbi Meir, v'lo Rabbi Yehuda, v'lo Rabbi Shimon. It's not Rabbi Meir, it's not Rabbi Yehuda, and it's not Rabbi Shimon. And the Gemara says, Kasal Kadaitach, right now we think Katan ben Achasim and Gadol ben Achasim. When it says Katan, it means poor, and when it says Gadol, it means Gadol ben Achasim. He has a lot of property, he's wealthy. So if that's the case, Rabbi Meir, if the Brisa were Rabbi Meir, Ha'amar Kulu B'hadei Hadadin, and we said when it comes to wealth, we treat everybody the same. There is no difference in the valuation of the Boshas payment, and the Brisa is making a distinction in the valuation. V'i Rabbi Yehuda, and if you're going to say the Brisa is Rabbi Yehuda, Ha'amar Ein La'avadim Boshas, but Rabbi Yehuda said there is no Boshas when it comes to Avodim, when it comes to slaves, and in the Brisa it is assuming the person had intention to be Mavayish and Eved, you pay the amount you would have paid the Eved to the Ben Chorin. V'i Rabbi Shimon, and if you're going to say the Brisa is Rabbi Shimon, Ha'amar Niskavin Levayish Hazeh, Ubiyesh Hazeh Potter. Rabbi Shimon says, if somebody has intention to embarrass one person and embarrasses a different person, he's Potter, and clearly the Brisa is saying Chayiv. And my time, what's the reason of Rabbi Shimon? Why does he say that by Boshas one needs to have intention? Kikatola, the reason is it's just like by situations of murder when we give the death penalty. Ma katola de miskavenly, just like by murder, it has to be that the person has intention in order to be chayiv the death penalty. T'chsiv, as it's written, v'orav lo v'kam olav, it says that he like ambushes him against him. Achi iskavenlo means until he actually has intention for him. Boshas nami, when it comes to boshas as well, ad mechavenly, there has to be intention. T'chsiv, as it's written, the pasuk that's talking about boshas, v'sholcha yada v'chazika b'mevushav, it says she sends forth her hand and she grabs his genitals. That's the source for this idea of paying boshas, ad she is kavin lo, but we learn from there that it has to be that she has intention for what she is doing for that particular person. And in any case, we have a question over here, who's the author of this Brisa? And the Gemara says, Liolam Rabbi Yehuda. Really, you could say that the author of the Brisa is Rabbi Yehuda. Now, the problem is, the Brisa implies that there is a boshas payment to avodim. However, we can say, V'chi Kamma Rabbi Yehuda ein la'avodim boshas. When did Rabbi Yehuda say there's no boshas for avodim? That's l'meis v'lahu. That's to give them, to actually pay them the boshas payment. Avol l'meishim but if you're just evaluating how much you're going to give to the free person, in other words, you had an intention to do it to the Eved, to embarrass the Eved, you ended up embarrassing a free person, and so therefore you're just using the Eved for evaluation purposes, Shaimin and Bahu, so you are allowed to evaluate based on the Eved, and again, give that money to the Ben Chorin, to the free person. V'ibay Seiman, if you want, I could say another answer, Afilu Temer Rabbi Meir, you can even say it's Rabbi Meir. Now, Rabbi Meir, in terms of the Bosh's payment, doesn't make distinctions between whether a person is wealthy or poor, but do you think that the Brisa means wealthy or poor, that Gadol ben Chasim and Katan ben Chasim, that Gadol means a wealthy person and Katan means a poor person? No, that's not what the Brisa means at all. Gadol mamish, Gadol means an actual adult, Katan mamish, and Katan means an actual minor, and therefore there is a difference in those kinds of payments, and that's how the Brisa could make sense, even within Rabbi Meir. Even Rabbi Meir would make a distinction between the boshas of a minor and the boshas of an adult. But the Gemara continues, V'katan bar boshas, so is it even possible to humiliate a minor? And the Gemara says, yes, Kedamar Rapapa, it's like Rapapa said in a different context, the Michlum Mulei U'Michlum, that it's talking about a person where if you embarrass him, he actually is embarrassed. Hachanami here also, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Vav Amud Beis.